Okay, we're gonna get started. Hopefully everybody's here. We're welcoming you guys. Thank you guys so much for being here and joining this educational session today with CPSDA. I'm really excited for this discussion among veterans in the industry that's going to concentrate on elevating yourself in the profession during times of uncertainty. Our three veteran panelists will discuss 3 or more strategies that they've used to elevate themselves and their programs to administration, to pivot their services, and to plan for a new normal when they do return to campus. Can't wait. So today, I'm Amy Culp. Looking forward to moderating today. I'm at the University of Texas, and I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Amy Bragg. She's the Director of Performance Nutrition at the University of Alabama. She's a recognized leader in collegiate sports nutrition with over 15 years of experience working in collegiate sports. Started at Texas A&M and now is at the University of Alabama. She prioritizes mentoring future sports dietitians to continue the advancement of growth of the profession. She received her first bachelor's degree in finance at the University of Texas, and she has also has a bachelor's degree in human nutrition and foods from the University of Houston. We also have Caroline Mandel. She's in her 20th year as a Director of Performance Nutrition at the University of Michigan Athletic Department. She earned her undergraduate degree in exercise phys from the University of Massachusetts, where she was a varsity swimmer. She completed dual Masters of Science degrees in kinesiology and public health nutrition from the University of Michigan. And John Tanguay is the Assistant Athletics Director and Director of Performance Nutrition at Texas A&M University. He has 12 years of experience working as a sports dietitian at Texas A&M. He takes a food-first approach to sports nutrition and works with Texas A&M student athletes to develop individualized nutrition plans and educate athletes through one-on-one counseling sessions, team presentations, grocery shopping tours, cooking demonstrations. He received his bachelor's degree from Connecticut College in 2002 and his master's in nutritional science from the University of New Hampshire. He's completed his dietetic internship at the University of Houston. So we're going to talk through the logistics of the call. All of your phone and computer lines are muted and will remain muted for the duration of the call. If you do have a question, please do submit that question under the question tab as part of the control panel on your screen. And so I'll moderate those questions and we'll allow some time for that Q&A probably towards the end, but if it comes up as the conversation flows, I'll make sure that our panelists answer your questions. And so, yeah, we'll have plenty of time for that towards the end of our discussion today. All right, guys, are you ready to drop some wisdom for us? Caroline, would you like to start with how you're elevating yourself right now? How have things changed for you? What's going on up there in Michigan, besides it being cold and gray, as you said?
Finally, the sun came out and blue skies are shining. So yeah, thanks you guys for having me. It's great to see everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're going through, what we're working on here at Michigan, and hopefully it'll give you some insight into things that you can be doing to elevate yourself and certainly give you a path forward. I came up really with 3 main areas, and I can share a little bit how we've accomplished these 3. Gosh, I was going to say the first week of March, I was on the road with rowing for a training trip, returned Sunday night. We'd already been having lots of calls about if COVID hits, you know, what are we going to do? What changes are we going to make? So that was happening every day while I was away in Tennessee. And by Wednesday, when the NCAA basketball tournament got shut down and then the hockey Big Ten tournament got shut down, the university closed on Thursday, Friday that week. And I've been at Michigan for 30 years since I came there for graduate school. And it is like urban legend that the university never closes. It closed for the first time ever last year during the polar vortex, which I thought, I didn't know how cold it would have to be for us to close. And then it closed again for the COVID pandemic, and gave everyone a chance to take a step back and figure out what was going on and what to do. And then by Monday, when the governor announced in the afternoon to shut down all gyms, we had tried to keep our grab-and-go breakfast and our fueling stations open, with lots of precautions and masks and gloves and Purell. And by 3 o'clock that afternoon, we knew that we were going to have to shut down and evacuate campus and quarantine at home. So that's kind of been where we've been since, I'm going to say March 16th. So I guess we're in eighth week of being at home. So in the meantime, lots of things have happened. Things have gone very fast. Lots of changes have been made. And thinking about the opportunity to talk today, I came up with 3 areas. And the first is to be proactive. And within that, dietitians have got to make themselves essential. And what I've looked at when I look at my strengths and my skill base, we're the experts in a lot of valuable skills that apply right now. For example, we're experts in food service and food safety. We are experts in communicating and educating. So we can use those skills to form task force groups, interdisciplinary groups with your staff to come together and start making plans. One of the things that we did as a staff, and now we've included athletic trainers, physicians, administrators, strength conditioning, is looking at all the domains of the nutrition programs and services to figure out worst case scenario when we return to campus, how we're going to operate fueling stations, team meals, nutrition counseling, team education, body comps. I mean, just consider what products we need to disinfect and sanitize the Bod Pod or the DEXA in between every single test. Wearing gloves, wearing masks, the athletes wearing masks, even considering whether or not we do body comps at the beginning. So we came up with a list of everything that we do and started thinking about the maximum amount of personal protective equipment and staff and athlete safety in order to carry out even basic tasks. And that's been really helpful. And as we've received more information from Health Department, CDC, the document that came out from the National Restaurant Association the other day was super helpful. So we've already been able to do that, form task force, and we're managing up to show our leadership team, administration, our sports medicine physicians, that as an essential professional that we can help lead the way into the return back to what we're really calling a new normal. Not the old normal, but the new normal. Being proactive also has allowed my staff and I to use this valuable time to catch up on all of those things that you always put on the back burner. And like, oh yeah, we need to get to that, you need to get to that. And before you know it, it's like 6 months can pass. So we have updated all of our policies and procedures, and we have sought out every possible webinar and online conference and opportunities really to sharpen our own skills, not only within the COVID and sanitation and safety, but also just any of our other skills. The second area is to be resourceful. I think dietitians are the most resourceful professionals in our entire department. I don't always know the answers to things, but I certainly know somebody who does, or a resource that can help. So beyond what I mentioned a minute ago about CDC, National Restaurant Association, I've also reached out to all of the people that we know from our culinary staff. I know I talked to one of my former professors who taught the whole class in food safety, just to get that input and update my resources and things like that. So being resourceful means really using our network. CPSDA, our professional networks are really there for us, and there's some great expertise. The other thing that we've done is we're trying to think of ways that we can help other members of our department, helping the athletic trainers when we go back to sanitize the coolers. You know, and I know the health department is going to be on site looking at what you do, and everything needs to be top notch and documented. We're also working with our mental health people to say, with all of the increase in mental health issues right now around this issue going home and then coming back, we're seeing a lot more eating issues. So really being available as a resource. The last area, and I'll stop, is to be prepared. So number 3 is to be prepared. we are instrumental in this new normal. And once I got over the initial shock and disappointment and stress of having to shut down and come home and not be there and spring season's canceled, my brain right away turned to the opportunity to really recalibrate my program, our services, and there's going to be such a necessity too with budget changes. They've already announced some degrees of budget changes for us, and also some safety changes. So for example, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have our student volunteers back, which really helped the program run in terms of helping with body comps and hydration testing and fueling stations. If classes are not in the classroom, I don't think we can have our students back in person. So we have to recalibrate and think of how do we run our programs without all of those valuable resources. If there's budget cuts that affect the food budget, then our athletes are going to have more needs around menu planning, grocery shopping, cooking skills, and looking at food pantry on campus and other food resources. And also, thinking about what we need to do more of because it has such value for the department and for the student athlete once they return, but also needing to make a very honest list about what we can't do anymore if we have less people to provide those services. The comment I made earlier about how we are great at communicating and educating is we're putting together groups around developing the education for the department. So I'm already scheduling an education seminar for all of our fueling station liaisons for once we know what that's going to look like. So we're looking at utilizing team Zoom meetings, social media, might even talk to our conference sports network for television access. I know we have screens all around the department where we can put some of our education up in the academic center and our facilities to talk about the hand washing and the wearing of the masks and the reporting of symptoms and all the check-in stuff that we're talking about with temperatures. So again, my three are to be proactive, to be resourceful, to be prepared. And I think all of these strengths and skills are in our wheelhouse. And if you're feeling like you're not sure exactly how to execute that, then certainly reach out to other members to get some mentoring and some partnership and some support. And I think it'll give us a lot more confidence moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Amy Bragg, you want to go next?
Sure. So I can talk about a few things that we have done as a staff, but we're guiding our operations with a few. I have a few mantras in mind, and some that we've used with our staff, and some that come from our coaching staff. And one of them is, in struggle, there is opportunity. So when you're in a moment where you're frustrated or having a bad time, you're looking at budget cuts, it's good to remember struggle is good for us. With deregulation, with what we've had the last few years, the wine has been flowing, and it's not right now. It's not going to right now. It's not going to be the way it was. It's not going to be as easy to get positions. It's disappointing, but it's where we are. And in struggle, you can also show yourself. You can show where you are professionally, and you can either be rookie status or you can be a veteran. So I have been sort of guiding my own operations, my own communication with that in mind. We give and give and give our energy and our time to the athletes, and a lot of times there's not a lot left over. But now we need to give to our colleagues and our coworkers, share what we have, and also be adaptive. That's something our staff has been talking about a lot. How do we adapt in this environment so we can make an impact, show ourselves, continue to advocate and show our value in all kinds of different ways. We have definitely adjusted what we do as far as education. We're very relationship oriented in general here. Our support staff is almost entirely relationship oriented. So when that daily interaction is taken away, we have to find other ways. One of the guide points or the goals that we've had is we're going to communicate with every athlete twice a week, at least twice a week. And it can be through Teamworks, it can be call, it can be whatever you want. Something is going to every team, to every athlete twice a week. And it may just be something we've designed, you know, how to sanitize your kitchen, easy stuff. We also did a web series, really that was planned with football. We were in the middle of, with spring ball and training before that, we were doing a 2 weekly cooking demos in the facility. And so we took those online. That I think just the response to that, because you have a lot of fans watching, we were getting 40 and 50,000 views for a cooking demo. I think that really perked up some eyes. For us, this was a budget year when we were looking at adding staff. We were on the way up. So given that setback, more than ever, this is the time to take a long-term view. This is another internal discussion that we have had. Take a long-term view. This is bigger than yourself. This is bigger than your program, your whatever. We have to take a long-term view. We were in the middle of budget preparations in March already, so we had started discussions, and then this happened. One of the things we were challenged to do is cut your operating budget 10, 15, and 25%. 25% being, worst case scenario. We don't think it's going to be that, but worst case scenario. So what I did, I submitted ways to cut our budget by 25% and said, let's cut it 25, and I don't want to lose any staff. Because the reality is, and this is national, but really in our state, if there's not college football, the state economy is really different. I mean, everything's different, but for us, it's 365 days a year. We're talking about the Iron Bowl. I would rather give up trail mix. We'll give up nuts. We'll give up all of that. I just don't want to give up any staff. So I mean, it was probably an aggressive step, but in hindsight, I'm glad that I took it, because we're not talking about cutting any positions right now. And we've come back to a 10% budget reduction for operating costs. And that to me is totally manageable. But I did it, one, because I don't want to lose any staff, absolutely. But also because it's a way to show where you are and what you see internally. How do you see your commitment, your role, what is your part in all of that? And to me, that's a way to be big picture oriented, see the whole department. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of your administrators. I think about athletes and coaches all the time, and I really don't think about the administrator's perspective, but wow, a lot of them are taking voluntary pay cuts, and there's just so much uncertainty. Again, it's an important time to be big picture, long-term view. This is bigger than our programs and bigger than ourselves.
That's awesome. That's being proactive. And so your mantra there was cut my budget, but not my staff. And
yes,
with that. Yeah, you helped them to see it before they even had to, right? You helped them. You were proactive in that, and like, even if we don't have a seat at the table talking about the budget, you're showing that, like, I see what you're dealing with, but I'm also showing you what's most important for the athletes. We can get there without the trail mix budget, like you said.
yes.
Yeah, it's awesome. John?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that we've really focused on is communication. Making sure that line of communication stays up when we're all kind of separated in different places. Kind of early on, we're trying to figure out what it was going to look like, what our operations were going to be, and we decided to just start having daily staff meetings. So every morning at 8:30, we get on a Zoom call as a nutrition staff and have a daily staff meeting and talk about, whether it's some of the educational materials that we're putting out, the demos that we're doing, any communication that's come down to me, I can communicate that with my staff in that situation. And I think that's something that's really helped us be super productive as a program. Next, communicating up daily. My direct report hasn't necessarily asked for daily updates, but that's something that I started doing early, and it's something that I've continued to do on a daily basis throughout this whole situation. And I think that's been super helpful to show administration that we are here and we are working and we are engaging with student athletes, and we're really trying to impact and help to prepare these athletes so that they're in the best place that they can be now and then when we start to come back. Communication with staff as well, as we're putting some of this stuff out, we're making sure that head coaches, other support staff, athletic trainers, strength coaches, sports psychology, all those folks are included in that so that they see the messages that we're sending out and they can echo that with our student athletes. Basically what I started doing kind of a nutrition update when our services changed with our head coaches and with senior staff and with directors of operations, but that's almost turned into a weekly update where, at the end of the week, if things change, or just kind of updating on what we're at and what services we're providing and what we're able to do with our student athletes. Another thing that we've really focused on, like Caroline talked about, is documentation and documenting, what nutrition resources we're providing, what nutrition services we're providing, and what manner we're providing them. What we're doing from a safety and a sanitation and a cleanliness standpoint to really show the student athletes and coaches and administration that we're doing the best that we can to provide for our department and make sure that what we're doing is going to be in a safe and responsible manner. And then the third thing kind of falls in line with communication, but just reaching out to the student athletes, asking them what they need, what they're looking for, what they want right now, and what they're comfortable with and what they feel comfortable with and safe with, so that if we are doing stuff for them, it's what they need, it's what they want, it's what they're going to utilize, and it's something that puts them in a place where they feel safe and secure. And I think I've been really pleased with how things have been running and have been going here.
So what would you guys say to the dietitian that feels like their direct report, their administrator, maybe doesn't do a great job of advocating for them or their program, or maybe doesn't even understand why they need to or what they do? Maybe they feel like there's a bit of a disconnect. What do you feel like would be the way that they could succeed in this and not end up, because we can't always have a seat at the table when those meetings happen, but you need to know who your advocate is, you need to know who your person is, you need to make sure that person is well informed. So what would you say, what are some bits of wisdom that you would have for somebody for that?
If I can jump in on that, we've all heard that term, manage up. I'm fortunate at Michigan that my administrators are great communicators and solicit, the input of me and my staff for lots of projects over the years. So we've got a good rapport going, and we were able to really build off of that in this time. But I have heard from dietitians where they don't know what's going on, or no one's really asked them to help. So when you think of the term manage up, I think of a couple of the things that I've done in terms of collecting some information and then sending it up and scheduling a conversation. One of the things I did with all of my teams after everyone settled at home, because we've been in shelter at home for 8 weeks, and everything's completely shut down, like many of us. I sent out questionnaires to all my teams and I asked, what's been your biggest challenge? What's been your biggest achievement? What do you want your nutrition to look like when you come back? What advice would you give to your rising sophomores for nutrition for when they move off campus next year? And then what nutrition advice would you give to your incoming freshmen? I wanted to have lots of little tools for like what Amy and John were talking about when you are communicating with your athletes regularly. I wanted to do it in such a way that they felt embraced, they felt supported because of how stressful this is for them. So I wanted to like just keep that conversation going. So I built on that and I collected those data, but then I was able to share that with my administrator to say, here are the things that are challenging them, but here's some really cool things that they've accomplished. And based on those challenges, I've put together some programs that are going to answer the call about like, I don't know how to cook chicken. When I come back to school, I don't know how to cook. So, you know, like John said, and like Amy said, like we're doing, you know, those chefs doing cooking demos. I stole Amy's idea. We're going to try to do one live next week. Hopefully the technology won't let us down. But I think that was a nice piece to show how the nutrition staff is essential, how we're working, how we're here, just with, you know, possible furloughs or layoffs and that kind of thing as that comes up, we're able to show that there's a lot of needs that are happening now and a lot of planning that has to happen for when they come back. But just like the earlier thing that I mentioned about looking at everything that we do from body counts to hydration testing, individual counseling, fueling stations and team meals, like what is going to be required for us to provide those services safely, and then what the student athlete needs are now and how we're able to do the education now. And we might end up having to do Zoom consults even when athletes are back on campus. We might have to do team presentations using Zoom just for that safe physical distancing once everyone comes back. And you know, we've all gotten really good at it really fast. But again, taking those data, scheduling an appointment with the supervisor, the administrator, managing up and just showing how I've got a lot of information that's going to help the department and help the athletes.
Yeah. Amy or John, what to say about like how can you communicate to those above you about what the dietitian does besides food if they're not maybe aware of that, or if you feel like you don't have the opportunity to be at those meetings communicating what you're doing? Do you have any the practical advisement? And what I know is administrators aren't going to read like a long email that you send, right? So how can you get that message? How can you get those little snippets in? How can it be visual, or how can you, I mean, I think if you're saying that you have 40 to 50,000 views, I think what you were saying is there people above us see the number of views. And if it's 40 to 50,000, we got something to say and people are listening. And so so maybe some tactics like that y'all are using to kind of broadcast what you're doing?
If somebody came to me on my staff or called me and said, I don't feel like I have an advocate, or I'm not sure they understand or whatever, I would first say, make sure you're giving them a reason to advocate for you. So make sure you've got your head down doing good work, being mindful, being self-aware, and cranking out some work in this time that's adapted to this environment. That's the first thing. And then you can share it. If you're sharing it, social media and all the different ways we communicate with teams, like some teams use GroupMe, some teams use Teamworks, and then administrators see all of those messages. That can be a way without being in their face and not being big picture in the moment, to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that we've tried to do is including administrators and head coaches and decision makers in the material that we're developing and the message that we're sending out, so that they are aware of the work that we're doing, and they are aware of the variety of things that we're doing. You know, I think back to the the 10 reasons to hire a sports RD document that CPSDA put together, and all the different things that we're credentialed to do, you know, from medical nutrition therapy to body composition testing, which is going to be a huge thing when we come back, and food service is just one component of it, you know. And, you know, I think that showing your value in all the different areas that document discusses is something that can be really huge to show your value to administration, not just food service.
Yeah, you have to show that you're essential through the work, and then that is a great summary of how you can be shown. You guys
I'd
have
love to see, Amy, I was going to jump in. As I was reviewing the top 10 reasons to hire sports RD, like this document has been so helpful in sharing with students, education, mentoring, et cetera, but you know, specifically around this food sanitation and food safety aspect, it'd be nice to see that worked in a little bit, because I'm seeing dietitians all over the country being such an integral part of doing the problem solving for how we're going to feed athletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can become essential. And I'd say a lot of times ADs think in risk mitigation and money, right? So how can you make sure you're helping them to see that you are helping to reduce risk at this time, which is obviously key and on the forefront of everybody's minds. I've seen a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing on social media, which I just get so inspired. Dietitians are so cool. And so what are some ways maybe that people aren't seeing, right? Some of the things we don't put out there, and the ways I know that at Texas we've pivoted our services for sure, right? Because we've had to. So what are some kind of key ways that you feel like you've maybe pivoted your services? And I think, Carolyn, you said, you know, we might choose to continue this way, or we're going to continue Zoom because it's going to be the safest, or, you know, it's really efficient to do meetings in this way, or, you know, what are some ways that you've pivoted and maybe some things that you'll continue to do differently? John, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that the social media is a huge thing. Our social media account got hacked in October, and we had to shut it down and restart it. And I think that when that happened, we got away from it a little bit, you know, and we get so focused on, you know, our daily communications and our relationships that we have with the athletes. Like Amy said, you know, you get used to seeing them in the hallway, in the dining hall, and in the weight room every day, and, you know, you forget the importance of you know, the relationships that you have with them. And I think that's something that's become really apparent when you're away, is that you recognize maybe where you had really great relationships and maybe where, you know, they weren't as good as they could have been, you know. So really working on building those relationships and making that they're secure and strong. You know, I think that we came up with the strategy kind of that first day when we were back after spring break, like Caroline said, when everything kind of shut down. And, you know, we put together an education strategy and what we're going to do on social media and things that we're going to do internally that maybe we didn't share with the world. And so we've kind of had a combination of that. And I think it's been really successful, you know, just feedback from the athletes and the coaches and support staff is how relevant the material is to where we're at, and how impactful it is with the student athletes. And I think that really what we've done as a staff working together and making sure that stuff is targeted and purposeful has been something that I want to build on moving forward. Really our work together as a group.
I feel like we've been entrenched in our new normal for so long. It's like, what is it we used to do? I don't remember. So long ago. But, I was thinking about like our Zoom consults, and it might be something we continue to do, just because I know a lot of times it takes athletes extra time maybe to come meet with you in their office, and then they have to go back to class or get to the dining hall or get to another facility for practice. I almost see being able to do the Zoom calls, now that they've made it HIPAA confidential, being something that the athletes really value, and is a real time saving for them, where you can really get the same impact of like that one-on-one. I value so much face-to-face and being in person and being able to read nonverbal communication. But at the same time, that might be something that actually solves some like transportation and scheduling problems with trying to, work someone in on your schedule who really needs to have some one-on-one. The social media thing has been like fun and fantastic, and I think it's kind of helped again keep that conversation going, and kept people's interest, and at the same time educating them. I'm not super good at social media, so I'm super grateful for my staff, who has a heck of a lot more savvy and creativity, especially with social media platforms that can be interactive.
Bragg, did you have anything else where you guys have kind of pivoted your services that you think are kind of unique that might help the members?
Well, one of the things we started doing with the football population that we have never done before, with life skills and our sports psych and sports medicine, we created some things that were going out to athletes that were, timely and relevant. And then we pushed all of that stuff to our parent groups. So we have a Alabama football parents Facebook group that is huge. What I have found, and I have never sent information that way before, it was actually more effective than just using social media, getting messages and targeted messages. And I will continue to do that, because it has elevated us with parents and guardians and grandparents and everybody right now. We're getting a lot of feedback from parents about, oh my gosh, we got to feed this kid and it's so much food. We're getting a lot of feedback about, how much we're appreciated at this point. And I think a lot of it comes from just sending volume, sending recipes, how to make a smoothie, easy stuff, really simple stuff, but to the right audience. So I find that, or this is maybe just my perspective, but I don't think student athletes want to learn from us or really interact with us too much on social media. I think they want their picture on our social media a lot of times, and our video. They want to be featured on it, but they don't necessarily learn from it. And it's not usually the right targeted message for individuals. It can start a conversation, and maybe that's good, but I don't find it to be as impactful as just being at dinner. So I will definitely continue to communicate with the parents.
That's so true. I mean, I think that I don't know if you guys also experience that. Like you said, there may be fans that were fans of our Instagram, but only time we would get our athletes to follow is if we tag them, put a picture of them up, right?
Right.
So it's been interesting to see how athletes are using it. But I don't know if others have had that same experience. We've had that same experience too, where, parents are messaging us like, thanks for the ideas and thanks for the recipes. And I'm like, okay, but get your kid in the kitchen with you. That's great. But, we hope that they're getting in the kitchen too. But it will be interesting to see, from this, will we continue to use social media in that way, or what do we learn from it and what can we take from it? As we're all saying, I think everyone has said it, the relationships have been so key, always on a day-to-day basis. And we know that building that, they have to know that you care before they hear what you say. And so I don't know, it will be interesting to see if we all continue to use social media in that way, or if we just pivot back to kind of what we were doing internally, right? And meeting the needs of our athletes there. But those key learnings are great that you have that with your parents, and God bless the person who's managing that Facebook page. Okay, so some questions that have come through. If you guys are good with us moving on to that, we have a few minutes. What are some considerations or tips you might give to someone who will be joining an academic institution as a culinary/sports RD post reopening? Get ready to work. But what would you guys have? What considerations or tips to give to somebody? Sounds like maybe joining in a new position as a culinary RD. Something specific?
I mean, be flexible, adapt to the environment. It may not look like you intend, and the workday won't look like it would normally or pre-COVID or whatever you want to call it, and it'll evolve. So be adaptive.
I think be ready to wear a lot of hats, just because if some of us are going to be short-staffed, that the culinary role is huge, and I love that people have that dual background. It's really valuable in sports at every level, but be prepared to wear a lot of hats. And there's going to be times where I guess our mantra, to use a quote, Tiffany would appreciate this. This is our saying, John, from back when Tiffany started, was no job's too big, no job's too small. So, you don't get dead set on what you think your job description is, because there's going to be times where you might be picking up trash out of the parking lot, or covering someone, God forbid someone on the staff becomes sick, and there's going to be a lot of need for backing each other up. And helping, take care of yourself and helping to take care of others. So be ready to wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, I think, and be ready to work. I think that the feedback that we've gotten from our student athletes is that they're more comfortable with what we're able to provide for them, as opposed to, going somewhere else, or, they want to stay within their little circle. So, be ready, because there's going to be a lot to do for sure.
I think it's such an opportunity if you're going in potentially what was one role, and so maybe that director is seeing you as kind of a specialist in that role. Do some research now and add value before you even get there. Be the person who's helping that director researching all the food safety stuff, or all the rules in the state in which you live that they're going to have to keep in mind, and so that even before you join, maybe you've already made a mark for yourself in that role that you were going to be in. But as you guys all said, you might be washing some water bottles and a bunch of other stuff that we're all going to be, all hands on deck to make sure the athletes are safe.
One area, Amy, that's come up for us is I've had such a comfort zone in working with athletes on Zoom, and athletes that you already have a relationship with. So kind of easing into that is not, the transition to that has been pretty good, or working with teams. But an area I think where we're challenged is in onboarding our incoming freshmen, where you may have met them on a recruiting visit a year or two ago, but they don't really know you. Historically in the past, sometimes the first time an incoming freshman might meet me is the day before preseason physicals, and we meet and say, "Hi, I'm Caroline, time to do your DEXA." Or, yeah, jump in here, we're going to draw your blood, and fill out these questionnaires and that kind of a thing. But having that in-person meet and greet, the orientation and onboarding of incoming freshmen has always been in such and such a way, the way that we've done it. And now we have to figure out, how do we introduce ourselves to these incoming student athletes, maybe through a computer platform? How can we do some of the orientation and onboarding in a way that you still build a relationship, but it may not get to be in person?
Yeah. All right. During this time, how do you guys suggest newer professionals in the field continue developing themselves and growing when it's obviously going to be a struggle for job search and fellowships that are available? what can this person continue doing to grow and contribute to the profession?
I think we've got a great community here, of sports dietitians, and if there are opportunities to be in person and to volunteer or to work, continue to reach out and meet mentors and have conversations with sports dietitians and see what kinds of things they're doing and what approaches they're doing and be active in things like this webinar, and there's a lot of online stuff that's going on right now, and it can be a great opportunity for you to grow personally and professionally and make connections and still build your network, even though we're not necessarily together.
Yep.
I was thinking of making sure you have ServSafe certification, safe food handler credentials, as you market yourself for jobs that are available. And, it may or may not be in collegiate sports right away, just depending on where things are. But, getting some job experience, but also looking at some of those other types of credentials that really make someone really marketable and valuable. Around counseling skills, the food safety, any training in body composition assessment, et cetera, would be really valuable, make you really stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, just remember there's lots of paths and lots of ways to become a sports dietitian and continue developing yourself, and developing your skills as a dietitian will be important. Also, people are needing to pump out tons of content. So if you feel like you're amazing at, creating content and you have an area, part of the state or country where you are, maybe somebody would be willing to have you intern for them creating content instead of in person. So it looks like this question is about social media. How are you all measuring what's impactful post and maybe what's not worth continuing to post? Have there been any pivots in terms of the type of material you share after learning in the last several weeks?
I think a big thing, just feedback and the discussions that come from it have made us simplify. One of the things we're doing, I've been part of all these calls about facilities, and we're going to have this sanitation service, and we're going to do this, and this is the plan for reentry, and we're doing all these really specific, really exhaustive steps, cleaning, sanitizing, and we're going to need to do this every day and all that. And maybe 10 days ago, we're doing curbside to go from our facility for athletes, and we had a kid have a surgery and can't drive, and I brought his food to the door, knocked on it, and made sure he got something. And when he opened the door, and I was still in the vicinity, I got a picture of his apartment. We're doing some educational materials about how to clean and sanitize your apartment. We're doing, because it was just such a contradiction. In the day, we're talking about how to sanitize, how we're going to do all these chemicals and all these processes. And then I went by a kid's house and I thought, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this too, because we can't have this perfect environment here and then not address where they're living. Yeah. Reality.
Life skills. Mm-hmm.
Frightening. This is a big question. I don't know if we have time here for this question, but maybe some top of the mind. Do you have an action plan for returning to campus post-COVID regarding food service at fueling stations, dining halls, and training table meals? I'm sure you're all planning that. So maybe like the way to answer that question is, if they're not planning it yet, how do they need to start? Right, you have to think about that globally, and then how do you trickle that down into what that's going to look like? How are you attacking that big big project. And it's also with us not really knowing exactly what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right?
It's a massive undertaking, and there's so many unknowns in terms of when and under what conditions. I know the NCAA has put out some documents about the return to campus resocialization, they called it, and they have 3 different phases with no definite time points described. But we've just broken down like fueling stations, having an entry and exit point. We've already, like campus-wide, said athletes will be wearing masks at all times, potentially even in the weight room. But having, the staff wearing masks and gloves. We've talked about no bulk items. So no more bulk chocolate milk. We're debating between personal water bottles and single-use cups and what's safer. And what does that mean to how many cups we need to order, or how the bottles are going to be washed. Looking at, we're getting rid of loaves of bread, again in the short term, because we don't want athletes reaching into a bag to grab that bread to make a PB&J, and they might have to make PB&J on an individually wrapped bagel for a while, and I'm sure they'll get over it, as well as getting rid of some more expensive items. Before we closed, we had words like Purell in, Purell out. So when athletes come into a fueling station wearing a mask, they'll use Purell to hand sanitize. We'll have items stacked separately so you're not digging around for a different flavor of a bar. We might even think about putting things, in a bag for the day or a few days and handing the bag to the athlete to minimize the number of times they have to go to the fueling station to support physical distancing. And right now for training tables, it's going to be no buffets. It'll be to-go box. It'll be, our food service folks will pack those salads and fruit box separately, individual servings of beverages, no seating until maybe the next phase where maybe we can have people sitting at tables 6 feet apart. All compostable serveware, forks and knives and things like that. And with, budget cuts coming, some of this is more expensive. So we're trying to balance all of those factors. So I think we've got a pretty step-by-step detailed plan of how an athlete would move through in a fueling station and a dining hall to get their fueling, but also supporting all of the things that we're already doing. One of our concerns came up though, if you have an athlete in the weight room or going through the day and wearing a mask, if any of you have gone out and about and had to wear a mask all day, I found that I didn't drink anything for hours just because it's so inconvenient. You don't want to touch the mask because you can't touch your face. So I'm now concerned that if you're wearing a mask, you're not going to drink as much. And are we going to have athletes more susceptible to dehydration? What challenges does that present to fueling if you're wearing a mask? So something that we're going to have to think through and talk through and educate as a performance team.
Yeah, it's a huge, massive undertaking in terms of planning, and I think, you guys, if you have any other lasting or, sort of quick hits for this, again, like I said, this could be a whole 2-hour call because there's so many details that go into this, right? But I think what's important is that the dietitian is being proactive and doing some planning, and you're going to have to think through a bunch of different scenarios and kind of plan it all the way out. Identify the people that are really good with details on your staff and have them be on your committee, know the strengths of the people on your staff and have them help you in those areas to think through all those different details if that's not your strength. I think that's really important. And then communicating that up the chain. So like Amy said, you're the person that's seen as that food service expert, and they're thinking through those things. Thank you, guys. John, sorry, John, did you have something to say?
Oh, no. I mean, I think that Caroline listed a lot of great things there, and it's really just being strategic about your situation. We all have different situations. We all touch the athlete in a different way. So looking at your setup and where you are interacting with the athletes and really detailing how that situation is going to look in your situation. You know, we've got a month now until June 1st when some things might change, and you know, not being overwhelmed with everything that Caroline listed, but more breaking it down and being strategic and looking at each section once a day, you know, and then communicating that up, and you know, letting administration know we thought about all these situations. This is going to be your plan on how we're going to handle them.
Thank you guys for your time. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you being willing to share your expertise with the members and really just taking your time out of your day to present with us. I appreciate it so much. And good luck in your planning. John, like you said, hopefully we're back June 1st.
Yeah, maybe be ready for that.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. All right, guys. Have a great afternoon. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.